Hello and welcome to the CircuitPython weekly meeting for November 9th, 2020. This is the time of the week where we get together and talk about all things CircuitPython. I'm Scott and I work for Adafruit on CircuitPython. CircuitPython is a version of Python designed for microcontrollers, which are little small computers that are inexpensive and are used in lots of things. Adafruit is primary sponsor of CircuitPython, including myself and a number of others in this meeting. So if you'd like to support CircuitPython, one way to do it is by purchasing hardware from Adafruit. They're an open source hardware and software company based out of New York, and you can go to adafruit.com to do so. This meeting happens at Mondays at 11 a.m. Pacific, 2 p.m. Eastern on the Adafruit Discord server, which everyone is welcome to join by going to the URL adafru.it/discord. We'd love to see you there. We're there in the text chat all week long, along with the voice chat for this meeting on Mondays. Let's see. If you like to speak during the meeting, we do have the permission to speak limited by being in the CircuitPythonistas role. So if you do want to speak, just let us know and we'll add you to that role. It prevents folks from dropping in and spamming us, which is good. Also, there is a calendar available for when this meeting happens. Just in case there is a U.S. holiday on Monday, we tend to bump it either to Tuesday or basically move the meeting to Tuesday. So if you want to know when those are because you're not in the US, the calendar is a great way to do it. It's also a great way to handle time zone differences. So if you are outside of the US, check the links that Jeff just put in the doc. This meeting is recorded, so heads up that we do record the audio from the voice channel and video of the text channel. That's the CircuitPython text channel. So just let us know. Later on, we will give you the option of speaking. Otherwise, if you don't want to do that, you can just put notes in the notes doc and we'll follow up with that. We record it because we put this on YouTube and the audio gets pushed out as a podcast so that people who cannot make the meeting can still listen and hear what's going on in CircuitPython land. Like I said, there is a notes doc. Please drop your name in there along with hug reports and status updates. So this meeting is in 5 parts. The first part we have is community news, which is an overview of like all things CircuitPython happening around the internet. So we'll do that briefly. We'll follow that with the state of CircuitPython libraries in Blinka, which is kind of the statistics objective point of view of how the world is, or how CircuitPython is going. And yeah, that's meant to ground us in the realities of like the numbers that we want. After that, we have hug reports, which is the first of 2 round robin sections. So I will start and we'll go through the list of the folks in the voice channel, mixed in with folks who've left notes in the notes doc. Just saying briefly, thank yous to folks for the awesome work that they've been doing. So that's what hug reports is all about. It's about letting people know you're appreciative of them and reinforcing what we value as a community. After that, we have a second round robin called status updates, which is a chance for you to talk a couple minutes about what you've been working on and what you plan on working on in the coming week. It's a great way for folks to have or give tips and tricks to other folks if they're working on something that's similar to something you worked on in the past, for example. And I should say that if you are in the voice channel but don't want to speak for any reason, just let us know that you're lurking. Check the notes doc to make sure that you're noted as lurking as well. If you do want to have participate but not speak, you can put notes in the notes doc and I'll read those off on your behalf. The 5th part of the meeting, the last part, is the in the weeds section. This is a chance for us to talk about basically anything that we want to talk about related to CircuitPython. And if you have a topic for that, just drop it in the notes doc and basically we'll go through the list of things there and I will call on, like, leave your username so that we can kind of say like, oh, so-and-so, do you want to introduce this topic? And then we'll discuss it. So that's about it. And I will take a time code for the notes and then talk community news. So first and foremost, our lead story is Blinka now supports 60 single board computers. So as of this week, Blinka now supports 60 single board computers. And for those of you who don't know, Blinka allows single board computers to run most of the 280 CircuitPython libraries. So that's very exciting, and we get a lot of people that. So early congrats to maker Melissa as well, who's the leader of Blinka. Next up, we have, after I take a time code, CircuitPython 6.0 RC1 was released, thanks to Dan. It is the second release candidate of 6.0. If we don't find any stability issues, then we'll mark it as stable and move on in the world, which will be exciting. Next up, and the doc doesn't have pictures, but check the post from yesterday from Max Holiday. CircuitPython is going to be sent into space next month, it looks like. There's at least 4 spacecraft running CircuitPython 5.3.1 that are launching in December by NASA, which is super, super exciting. And thank you, Foamy Guy, for the screenshot of it there. Next up, the LCA Linux Conf Australia 2021 Swag Badge Project. A limited number of Swag Badge electronic badges will be produced for the online Linux Conf Australia, which will be distributed to conference attendees January 23rd through 25th, online worldwide. The swag badge is specifically developed and tailored for the conference. The board will ready for development with the latest MicroPython installed and features an ESP32 microcontroller and dual OLED displays. Always good to see that. Second to last, we have an Adafruit update. Adafruit is shipping orders. And we're also stocked with stuff, so check that out. And now's the best time to get orders in for your favorite products, including holiday projects and gifts. Adafruit parts have free and easy to follow tutorials at the Adafruit Learning System, which is learn.adafruit.com, and you can buy products from adafruit.com. This all comes courtesy of the Python for Microcontrollers newsletter. That is emailed every Tuesday morning. Shout out to Anne, who puts all the news together every week for this awesome newsletter. For those of you here, if you're doing really cool Python, MicroPython, CircuitPython projects, we'd love to hear about them. We'd love to highlight them in the newsletter. So if you'd like to contribute, I guess I should say if you want to get the newsletter, you can go to adafruitdaily.com. If you'd like to contribute to the newsletter for yourself, you can go to github.com/adafruit/circuitpython-weekly-newsletter. Check the drafts folder there and submit a pull request. You can also tag at @Anne_engineer, that is ANNE_engineer on Twitter, or email annb@adafruit.com with all your hot leads of really cool Python stories. And with that, that's community news. Next up, we have State of CircuitPython libraries in Blinka. First, I'll talk overall and then go to the core and then hand it off to Kattni for libraries and Melissa for Blinka. So first off, I will say overall, we had 26 pull requests merged from 14 different authors. Some new folks that I don't recognize here are TWA127, and Sporeball, I think, is relatively new as well. We had 9 reviewers for those 26 pull requests, so thank you to all 9 reviewers. As always, if you want to start contributing, getting review privileges and helping us review is really, really helpful. And so if you want to do that, reach out to myself or Kattni or Dan or any, we can direct you to some other folks as well if you want to help review. The more reviewers we have, the more authors we can support. Issues wise, we had 21 closed issues by 15 people and 23 opened by 20 people. Net open 2, which is not too bad, and lots of people are involved, which is really exciting. And next up is the core. So on the core side, we have 8 pull requests merged from 8 different authors. Thank you to all our authors. We had 4 reviewers. We have 17 open pull requests. Three of those again are over 100 days old, and we also have a couple new ones. So that's where we are on pull requests. We have 2 closed issues by 2 people, 7 open by 7 people. So we're part of the problem. We've got 5 new open pull requests or new issues, for a total of 326 open issues. One way that we keep track of how we're doing on triaging issues is by assigning milestones. We have 4 issues that are not assigned a milestone, so we'll take a look at those today. And then we have 1 open issue for 6.0 and a number of issues for 6.xo features and 6xx bugs. And that's where we are on milestones. And so overall, I would say we're very, very close to 6.0 stable. And as soon as we see 6.0 stable, expect to see a 6.1 unstable release. So let us know if there's anything urgent that we need to get in or that we should block a stable release on. But I think I'll bring it up in the weeds as well, because maybe we want to do that. Exciting times. Thank you to everybody who's contributed to 6.0. It's going to be a good one. Thank you, Anonymous Cheetah, for writing out my overview. Okay, next up, let's go to Kattni for the library update.
Thanks, Scott. So this applies to all of the Adafruit CircuitPython libraries, which is every repository that begins with Adafruit_CircuitPython_. We had 16 pull requests merged by 7 authors and 8 reviewers. I think Foamy Guy is new to reviewing, so I wanted to call out Foamy Guy for joining us in reviewing. The more reviewers we have, the more authors we can support. In terms of merged pull requests, we had 3 that were over a month old, which is excellent, and the rest of them were all within 0 or 1 days, leaving us with 32 open pull requests, the newest of which is 2 days old. So hopefully we will be getting 2 more of those this week. We had 18 issues closed by 15 people and 14 opened by 14 people. So we are net down for 232 open issues. 9 of those are good first issues. If you're interested in any of this information or interested in contributing to CircuitPython, check out circuitpython.org/contributing. There you'll find all of this, a list of open pull requests, a list of all the open issues, and some library infrastructure issues. And all of those things are things that we would love to have help with. In terms of reviewing, even if you don't have reviewing permission, you can still take a look at any of the open pull requests and just let us know that you took a look at it. Check it for syntax. If you have the hardware, actually test the PR. Let us know that you did that. All of it's helpful. And in terms of open issues, if you're new to everything, you can search for good first issues, which are at a very basic level. Or you can search for bug or enhancement if you're looking for something a little more complicated. And that will give you all of the issues across all the libraries that apply to those labels. And it's also a great place to get started if you want to actually contribute code. And there is a guide on contributing to CircuitPython with Git and GitHub. And if you're unfamiliar with that, don't let that intimidate you. And we're always available to answer questions. We want you to join us. In terms of library updates in the last 7 days, there was 1 new library, TMP 11.7, and pardon, a number of updated libraries that I will not read off, but they are in the notes. And that's where we are with the libraries. In terms of the libraries overall, we're always seeing at least between 10 and 20 pull requests being merged, most of which are very new, which is great because it means that we're constantly updating what we have. And then seeing somewhere between 0 and 3 new libraries a week, which is also excellent because we're adding new hardware, which means we're expanding CircuitPython support. So it makes it much easier for folks to utilize CircuitPython in their project when there's more and more options all the time. Libraries are a great way to get started contributing. So if you want to join this project, check out the libraries. It's definitely makes things easier for folks who want to get started, because we have a lot more good first issues. And it also means contributing in Python versus contributing directly to the core, which is not Python. So if you're looking to contribute some Python code, check out the libraries. And that's what I got.
Awesome. Thank you, Katney. And I was excited to see there's 280 libraries right now.
Yeah, it's continuing to go up, and that includes both the CircuitPython, the Adafruit CircuitPython libraries and the CircuitPython community libraries, which are available in the CircuitPython community bundle.
Excellent. Awesome. Thank you. All right. Next up, we have Blinka update from Maker Melissa.
Hello. Blinka is our CircuitPython compatibility layer for Raspberry Pi and other single board computers. And this week, actually, we have some new statistics on here because of Foamy Guy adding that. And so I'm going to go ahead and read those off. We had 2 pull requests merged by 2 authors and 2 reviewers. We currently have 5 open pull requests, and those are listed between 5 different repos. And we had 1 closed issue by 1 person and 2 open by 2 people. We removed the Hacktoberfest label from 0 issues, and there were 45 open issues among the different repos now. There were 1,820 PyPI downloads in the last week, and we are currently supporting 60 boards.
Awesome. Thank you, Melissa. Okay, next up we have Hug Reports. Hug Reports is a chance for us to say thank you to folks for the work that they've been doing within our community, and more broadly, if you see it or think it's appropriate. This is done as a round robin, so I will start and then circle back to the top of the list and go through folks. If you don't want to speak, just let us know you're lurking and I will skip over you. If you don't want to speak but do have notes that you'd like me to read off, throw those in the note stock and I'll read them for you. Happy to do that. That also works if you're unable to make the meeting. So if you're listening to this after the fact and you would like to participate but can never make the meeting, check the note stock out. It's always pinned to the if you hit the pins icon on the CircuitPython text channel for the week prior up to the meeting. So you can always add those early if you'd like to start participating that way as well. And I'll take a time code and get going here. So first, a hug report to Maker Melissa for continued help with requests in ESP32 SPI. It feels like we've turned the corner, and I hope that's the case, but thank you for helping me get there. Thank you to Benny E for helping debug SSL issues. I saw lots of discussion when I was looking last week, and that's really awesome. Johnny, can you mute? And thank you for joining. There's one other person that I wanted to thank that I did not pull up. Scrolling back. I think it was from yesterday. Sorry. I was thinking about this. Oh, yes. So I wanted to thank AKBY Kraz for just posting the good news to the text channel that they were having some trouble with the display stuff, and they tried the latest version and it was all going much better. So thank you to them. And then also last up, thank you to Foamy Guy for joining Show and Tell and being so helpful overall. It was great to see you there. And with that, let's circle around. So we have notes from Anecdata. Anecdata says, hug report to Tan, Maker Melissa, and everyone testing and fixing for the push on Wi-Fi quality of life last week. And then we have some lurkers. And Carter Charles are lurking, so we'll go to Dan.
Okay, just one thing this week. Scott and I had a long talk about sleep, deep sleep, light sleep, and other kinds of stuff like that, and triggering events when those things, or when waking up from sleep when you get certain kinds of events. So there's already PRs and issues in process, and we talked about the details of that, and I'm going to be working on that but we had a very productive discussion, I thought, last week. Okay.
Awesome. Thank you, Dan. Next up, we have notes from David Glaude, who says, Hug report to Tanya and Lady Ada for an entertaining video. And next up, we have notes from D. Harada, who says, a group hug. And now we have Foamy Guy.
All right. For this week, I got a hug report for Dan. Thanks for working on all of the work in general, but recently I know Dan's done a bunch of work on Bluetooth Low Energy and getting that to work with ESP32s. And I had some fun playing around with a Matrix Portal pixel art demo that you can control from the Bluetooth Connect app. So Dan's work made that super easy to set up. To Kevin Thomas, I think last week or the week before, was named the Pi Dev of the Week. So that's really cool. Congratulations to Kevin. And then thank you for working on a great series of articles, Python for Kids. And then also this week, or over the weekend, made a ESP32S2 basic article reader. It will pull articles from Hackster.io and show the titles. So that was a good example project for the ESP32S2. Thank you to Marius450. I've seen a couple of cool things that Marius has made. The Matrix Portal Maze I thought was really cool. And then more recently, they made a kind of mashup between the Display.io shapes and the LED animation library to make on the Matrix Portal is how they ran it originally, but it works on displays as well. And it lets you make really cool animated shapes onto the screen, so that's really fun. And they also helped me figure out how to set up my repository so that I can't push to it from my local one, so hopefully I won't accidentally push anything anymore. And then lastly, thanks to Carter for a nice talk about Display.io and external displays that we'll talk a little bit more about in the weeds. Thanks.
Awesome. Thank you, Foamy Guy. Next up, we have Higher Effect.
Just a group hug to everyone for this week.
Awesome. Thank you. And next up, we have Jeff.
I also have a group hug. I feel like I've been a little bit of a hermit the last couple of weeks and not spending as much time with the community as I should. And I'm trying to turn that around. So maybe I'll have something more specific next time.
No worries. Thank you, Jeff. Next up is Jerry.
Yeah, thanks to the Benny as well for diving into the SSL issues with the ESP32S2 and a group hug.
Awesome. All right. Next up, we have Katney.
So I have a hug report for Foamy Guy for updating the Feather Sense guide to have the right library folder structure in the screenshot and the list. We updated the LSM60S, I think, library, refactored it from a single MPy file to a package, and there are still lingering guides that were not updated. So slowly people are catching that and reporting it. And Foamy Guy has updated multiples of those guides for me, so thank you so much for that and everything that you do. And a group hug to everyone.
Awesome. Thank you, Katney. All right. Next up, we have notes from Kevin Thomas, who says, hug report to Foamy Guy for partnering with me to get the CircuitPython IoT streaming data ESP32S2 OLED version tutorial complete on the Metro ESP32S2. And next up is Maker Melissa.
Hello. So I wanted to give a hug report to Jepler for helping point me in the right direction regarding an issue I was having with SD card I/O. I wanted to give a hug report to Foamy Guy for adding the Blinka stats to AdaBot and for the other related repos. I wanted to give a hug report to you, Scott, for working on pinpointing the cause of the request's ESP32 SPI issues, and a group hug to anyone else.
Awesome. Thank you, Melissa. Next up, we have notes from Mark, who says, hug report to Foamy Guy for doing some tests on my bus device to the core PR. And with that, we're done with hug reports. Thank you, everybody, for joining for it, and those of you who participated. Next up, we have status updates. Status updates is a chance for us to talk about what we've been working on and what we plan on working on in the coming week. It is done as a round robin, just like hug reports. So again, if you don't want to speak, just let us know you're lurking and feel free to drop notes and I will read those off. And as always, if you're unable to make the meeting but want to let us know what you're working on, we'd love to have your status updates as well. And with that, I will get started. So I merged, Melissa merged ESP32 SPI and request fixes that I PR'd. Well, it sounds like it's working better for everybody, and I hope that continues. So I was working on that last week, lots of debugging. This week, I'm working on a MagTag project for myself, and then I fully expect to find bugs and issues as I do it, and I will continue to run those down. So one that's on my radar in particular is an issue with some SSL services on the S2 with the native Wi-Fi stuff, so I'll get up to speed on where we are with that, and help get that checked in and fixed. And any other things that I run across. Okay, circling around, we go to Dan.
Hold on, okay. As I mentioned, I'm working on sleep and waking up from sleep. There were some strawman API proposals. I've got yet another proposal, and I'll be writing that. But an issue, and I'll start working on ESP32 implementation of this because that's the board that we're most interested in being able to sleep deeply right now. And once that's done, then I can move on to some other boards for the same thing. But that's the highest priority for right now. Okay.
Awesome. Thanks, Dan. All right. We have notes from David Glaude next, who says, last week, upgraded most of my boards to RC1 and controlling a Unicorn Hat HD using this library, with the link in the notes there. Hopefully it's in the CircuitPython community bundle as well. This week, starting from Thursday, playing with my MagTag, trying to understand pixel buff to maybe use it for the Unicorn Hat HD or the LED shim. And there's a link to an issue in the notes. And last up, trying to make a clue timestamp keyboard encoder for this meeting. Awesome. Thank you, David. Okay, next up we have notes from D. Harada, who says, last week working on a few guides. This week, hopefully finishing the guides I was working on and testing some PRs. And next up, Foamy Guy.
All right, I had a couple of days off last week and this week, so I've been spending some extra time working on CircuitPython. That's why I got kind of a long list this week. But I did the pixel art painting demo I mentioned on the Matrix portal, the Bluefruit Connect app. I learned how to set up Autobot to run locally to build the reports that get pasted into this document, and I added some extra repositories for the Blinka section of the reports. I updated the Feather Stents guide with the new library bundle, like Kattni mentioned. I went on show and tell for the first time on last week. I also, this week, I learned how to build the CircuitPython.org repo, how to get it to serve the site locally so I could test out changes in that repo. I did a bunch of testing on different devices on the bus device in the core branch that's in a PR right now. I'm super excited to see that come along, and I have not run into any issues. I ran it on a bunch of different devices, different ports and stuff, and used a bunch of different I2C and stuff. Devices haven't had any trouble there, so that's really cool to see that come along. I worked on a alignment example for the slideshow library. The new feature for alignment was added a little while ago, and so now we have an example that shows how to use it. I kind of dived into the core actually for the first time a little bit over the weekend, so I found an issue where groups and tile grids, after you set the hidden to true and then try to set it back to false, they don't reappear. And so I tried to fix that. I got some code that does seem to fix it. I don't know if it's necessarily the best way, but it did work. So that was really cool. And then this week, I want to look into refactoring the slideshow library to make it easier to do other things on the screen at the same time. Like if you want to bounce back and forth between the slideshow and some text, for instance. That's kind of how I got looking into the hidden stuff in the core. I want to look at refactoring Blinka PyPortal, and really I think there's probably a few other places as well that use secrets, importing secrets like to get your Wi-Fi network and stuff like that. So the problem is it conflicts with a module in CPython, so you can't just import it like that on at least on CPython on a PC. I don't know if Raspberry Pi has that problem or not, but I want to look at a way to solve that and make that code work everywhere if I can. And then lastly, I want to work on basically solving the problem generally of cycling through some lines of text. Like if you have a super tiny screen and you can fit 3 or 4 lines of text on it, I want to make it easy to cycle through the lines so you can show 3 or 4 at a time, and every few seconds, or when you hit a button or something, it will go to the next line and shift the previous ones off the top. So that's what I got going on. Thanks.
2 things for the secret stuff. Are you thinking of a new name that doesn't conflict?
I would like that for a long-term solution. The shorter-term, sort of less drastic change I was thinking of was just not doing the import and instead allowing it to get passed in as a parameter. And then if the parameter was none, then try to do the import inside the constructor. Mm-hmm. But changing the name, I think, is probably a good idea for the long term, especially as we get more and more devices with Blinka and we get more and more things that work on just like PC directly, right? The Bluetooth stuff and the display-IO stuff and all of that sort of stuff.
Yeah, so I guess we should say, think of a name, folks. What should we rename secrets? And then for the cycling lines of text, are you thinking like what terminal does?
I don't know. I'm not too sure what the terminal does, to be honest with you. I was thinking of with display.io display text, the label. I'm not sure. I've never really looked into terminal, how it behaves. But I was essentially thinking just kind of make a label with 4 lines or however many fit on the screen. And then each time you need to cycle it, just choose a new 4 lines out of your string, basically. If that makes any sense.
Yeah. You might want to take a look at terminal. I might do what you want.
Okay.
Okay. It only works for monospace fonts though, which could be a problem.
But it can do it can take like PDF file as long as it's monospace, or
yeah. Yep.
Nice. Okay.
Yeah, it just uses a single tile grid. So you can it's a single tile grid and you just feed it what you want to show and it just shows the latest thing that you wrote to it.
Nice. Okay, cool. Thank you.
Mm-hmm. Okay, next up we have Hierophect.
Okay, this last week was not my most productive for reasons, but I spent some time getting up to speed basically on UDP IP and kind of the whole internet protocol stack. It's been a long time since I did any networking, so and the first time I'm doing anything with the transfer layer. So I've been looking at that so I can hopefully be useful as those features proceed on CircuitPython. I did some reviews of the existing NeoPixel modifications and incoming CountIO and RotaryIO. This week, I'm going to be working more on UDP, hopefully actually getting some decent test batches that don't fail. I'll be working on, now that I have some additional NeoPixel hardware, I'll be working on soldering that together and speeding up those services on Arduino and potentially CircuitPython. And then working a little bit on the bug backlog, specifically the F1 port, which has been sitting around in our PR list for a long time. And I think that literally the fix for it is 1 line long, and I just haven't gotten in there to test it. So hopefully going to do that this week. I've also been working a little bit on personal project, which is SPI peripheral, an SPI peripheral module, which I'm using along with a technology called Steam VR, which is what powers the Vive headset, which I'm going to be using for some robotics teleoperation and other stuff. So yeah, been working on the API for that. And that's it for me.
Awesome. Thank you, Hierophect. Okay, next up we have Jeff.
Hello again. Last week, my main work was a guide for the CAN-IO module, which I think will go live soon. And I also did work on the Arduino CAN library for the upcoming Adafruit Feather M4 CAN. And along the line, I verified that with that upcoming Feather, you can use two CAN bus interfaces at the same time, one using the built-in transceiver and one with the external transceiver. Being able to, this is something that Adafruit is going to use internally when they test the boards. But another interesting thing you can do with that is turn your CircuitPython board into a CAN proxy, so you could filter things that came in from one side and send them out to the other side and maybe modify this or that. So an interesting possibility. Anyway, this week I'm getting back to audio out on the ESP32S2. I was a little bit stuck at the end of the week 2 weeks ago, but now I've got the debugger set up so that I can have breakpoints and get traceback information and all that good stuff. So hopefully that will allow me to at least gather the information to ask better questions. And in the fun stuff category, I just got a new 3D printer today. I bought into the marketing hype and got an original Prusa, and it's got more build area than my previous printer. The high-tech build surface and auto bed leveling were also points that I was really looking for. So I look forward to playing with that and listening to it in the background while I work on CircuitPython.
Thanks, Jeff. Next up, we have Jerry.
Yeah, hi. Not much to report. I think of any significance. Against all my efforts, I've been dragged rather kicking and screaming out of retirement temporarily on a project. So, but a little sidetracked on that. Hopefully, it won't be for too long, just a couple months, and hopefully no more than half time. But it does cut into my playtime a lot.
All right. Well, I hope you don't hate it too much, Jerry.
I'll survive.
All right. Next up is Katney.
All right, so last week published the Metro ESP32S2 guide, tested the install instructions in the Metro guide and found some quirks and issues so Lemore could update the instructions to be better. Wrote up a page explaining the pin naming in CircuitPython for the ESP32S2, including a fancy pin diagram. Created 6 fritzing objects, added to the downloads page in the BMP3XX guide to include the BMP390, found a bug on the back silk of the 128x64 OLED Featherwing. The button labels on the pins are backwards. They read ABC, it should read CBA. Added the STEM QT fritzing diagrams and the basic fritzing diagrams for the BMP390 to the BMP3XX guide. This week, I will be working on the MagTag guide. I actually just tested ESP tool I apparently don't have a Metro ESP32S2 with me, but I do have a Feather S2. So I ran it through ESP tool and it works as we originally expected, where I was able to just pip install it even inside a virtual environment and run it without using Python before the command, and it works fine. So I'll let Lemore know that, and we can update the instructions in the guide to be a little bit simpler. And then I'm going to be working on a new guide that is going to probably be evolving over time permanently, which is a guide on how to pick the CircuitPython board that is right for you. And the plan is to start with Wi-Fi boards. So there will be a page that, be a front page, and then the next page will be Wi-Fi boards. And you go into that, and there's going to be 2 or 3 sentences for each one that explains what differentiates it from the others. So for example, you're looking at the Metro Airlift and the ESP32 on it is a coprocessor versus the Metro ESP32S2, which uses the actual chip. And also if you are looking for a built-in display, then you would want PyPortal, things like that. So the plan is to have many pages that have features that people are looking for, so Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, built-in displays, built-in color displays, etc., so that folks can go to this guide and say, I'm looking for a board that does this thing. And they can go to that page, click it, find all the boards that have that thing, and find out what the features are for each of those boards to help folks pick. We don't have anything. We have something like that for Feather. We don't have anything like that for the overall CircuitPython boards yet. So that is the next thing that's on my list, and it's definitely something that's going to continue over time. We're not going to if it's not, I'm not well, I know we do, Melissa, but it's there's not an explanation of why one thing is better than the other. It simply says that it has Wi-Fi as a feature. It doesn't say like it has Wi-Fi and also does Bluetooth. That's what the guide is meant to do, is to go one step beyond what CircuitPython.org has. And I don't know about the non-ESP boards. Basically, if it's supported natively in CircuitPython, it'll be on the list. And it's going to start small and go big, basically. So we'll start with one thing and move forward page by page. And yes, that would be included, Lucian. So anyway, if as that guide goes up, let us know if you have feedback, because it's meant, for you. So if you go to that guide and it doesn't make sense to you, or you find something that doesn't, follow what you expect in terms of what you expected to get out of a particular board, please let us know either through the feedback or email support@adafruit.com, or find us on Discord. All of those things are valid ways to get a hold of us to let us know that this particular guide might be better with some additions to it. So keep an eye out for that. The MagTag guide will be coming up first because it's already been released and we don't have a guide for it yet. So that will be the first priority. And that's what I've got going on.
Awesome. Thank you, Katney. Okay, next up we have notes from Kevin Thomas, who says, last week created a new microbit v2 tutorial on how to modify a C library. Taught how to add a library function called microbit.temperature_f to, when called in the Python REPL, would read the board's internal temperature sensor and convert it to Fahrenheit and return that value to the user. Partnered with FoamyGuy to create a CircuitPython IoT streaming data ESP32S2 OLED version tutorial, in addition to a REPL version for the Metro ESP32S2. This week, developing a more in-depth tutorial for how to create a custom C library for the new microbit v2 in preparation for their launch. Develop a custom music theory C library that will be callable in the Python REPL to where the user can pass in a note such as C, and it will return all of the chords in the C major scale. There will be a minor key conversion function as well for all of the notes from A to G, including all of the relative sharps and flats. And next up we have Maker Melissa.
Hello. Last week I added 8 new Blinka boards to CircuitPython.org. I worked with Scott to add the request, or getting some of the request ESP32 spy bugs squashed. I updated the PyPortal library to handle HTTP errors better. I ported some of the PyPortal library improvements to the Matrix Portal library, and I added the 2.9-inch tricolor featherwing to the e-ink breakouts and featherwings guide. This week I am working on writing a MagTag library. And that's it.
Awesome. Thank you, Melissa. Next up, we have notes from Mark, who says, want to move bus device to the core, add a draft PR. Think it is ready. That's very exciting. And next up, we have notes from Microdev, who says, finish the rotary I/O and the count I/O implementation for the ESP32S2. This week, I'm working on implementing a camera module for the ESP32S2. Also, I plan to upgrade the current camera module implementation to a more mature CamIO API. Awesome. Excited to see that. And that's it for status updates. Thank you to everyone as always. And last up we have the final section, which is in the weeds. In the Weeds is a chance for us to just talk about kind of whatever we want. Whether, sort of longer form discussions can happen at the end here. It gives us the time and space to have discussions. So if you have topics, please add them to the bottom of the section and put a note into what your username is so that we'll hand it off to you. And with that, I'll hand it off to Foamy Guy and Carter.
All right. So we got to talking about this originally this came up with lots and lots of people have matrix portals now, right? And lots of them are being introduced to Display.io for the first time, and lots of the existing Display.io sample code makes use of board.display, which won't work on the matrix portal just yet. Or I don't know if it's just yet or if it will ever work. I guess it's not exactly a built-in display. So the example code doesn't work. And what we tried to come up with was, what's the easiest solution that we can kind of update the sample code to get it to play nicely with as many people as possible. So the kind of proposal that we came up with here was sort of two parts, basically making a guide page or enhancing an existing guide page that will kind of explain and show examples of how to set up a bunch of different external displays, including the RGB matrices. And then in the code, in any of the example code, we'll try to be diligent about including this code here that Carter just pasted in the chat. So make a variable for display and set it equal to board.display if you're using a built-in display. And then, right there, we could have a link to that guide page where they would be able to go and look up, is it an external LCD display, or is it an OLED, or is it an RGB matrix or whatever. They could see the initialization code right on that page, and they would just replace the display equals board.display with their own setup. And then the rest of the code hopefully would work the same without having to make any other changes is the idea. So just looking to get feedback on, I guess, kind of two parts. I guess the little chunk there that we are thinking about putting in the examples, or I think feedback on a technical level if there's some way that I don't know about, or some way that we haven't considered that maybe we could make it even less of a difference technically. That would be cool as well.
Yeah, I was thinking about this a little bit when I was playing with my Matrix portal, and it's fundamentally what I think you alluded to is like there is not actually a built-in display because you could hook it up to multiple different ones.
Different kinds, yeah.
I mean, theoretically, we could like default it to the largest of the displays that we want to handle, but like then we're using a bunch of RAM that we don't actually need. So I think the idea of a guide page that just has, with this display do this example, with this display do that example, is perfectly good. My preference in terms of like how examples should handle multiple support is just have multiple examples rather than having one example that has a lot of different things that are commented out.
Yeah, perfect. And yeah. I will. I worked on. I don't remember. I don't remember what library it was in, but it came up as an issue originally. I think display text maybe, or one of those libraries. And I did create a separate example for it, so that's good to know as well that we like the separate files better. I think I'd prefer that as well too. So I can work on creating some more of those.
Yeah, the reason that I like separate examples is it means the example itself is smaller and simpler. And it also doesn't require the user to comment or uncomment anything.
Yep. Just ready to go with it, and doesn't leave a bunch of extra stuff they don't know about or can get confused about, especially if they go to try to paste two examples together and they got a bunch of extra stuff. If they don't really understand it gets even more confusing for them. Yeah,
so that was the approach I took with all the e-inks. So if you look at like the IL0373 examples folder, you'll see like, here's the example for the 2.9 monochrome. Here's the example for the 2.13 flexible or whatever. So if you want to see how I did it there, that's a place to look.
Awesome. All right. Yeah, that sounds good, Carter. I can work on updating those library examples.
Katney, is that all okay with you?
Yeah. I sort of tuned out. I'm sorry. Can you sum it up for me?
Yeah, so it's
no
like, how do you handle multiple displays for an example? Whether you have one example or you have a lot of small examples.
I think it really depends on the number of displays.
Yeah, we're talking specifically about matrices.
Okay. Because the point being, if your setup ends up being, 100 lines of code because you have to put in, that many displays, then smaller examples make sense. But if it's only, 15, 20 lines of code to implement, 4 or 5, then one example would be fine.
Okay. I'll try to, as they come up, I don't know where all of these different examples are going to be kind of spread apart. So I will kind of look at them and take it case by case and see how many it's going to end up being for each one of them.
And include comments in like the size of the setup, because you obviously you want to have, a couple lines commented out that say like, use this one for this one and this one for this one. And that, if that starts to make it too lengthy, then you want to split it out.
I will say on the matrix portals, the nice thing is the library, right? The library, you can just import it and it does a bunch of the magic for you. So on that front, it's actually really, really easy.
Right. Exactly. So that also works. But yeah, it's case by case basis. Get a feel for it. We have if you look around, you'll find a few examples where we've got 4 or 5 things commented out with 2 lines of explanation above each one. Anything more than that, and I think it gets unwieldy.
Okay, sounds good.
All right, thank you all. Lastly, let's hand it over to Dan.
So I had typed this in before I looked at the last issue list. RC1 has been out for more than a week. Do we think that the outstanding issues that we have right now should hold up 6.0.0 final or not? So one of them that was placed in 6.0.0 is the grayscale OLED one, which you marked as added to the 6.0.0 milestone.
Right.
And the other is this other odd crash on ESP32S2 when you import certain things.
Mm-hmm.
And the question is, I wasn't sure why you thought the grayscale was a showstopper for 6.0.0.
I think for me, it's just like, it's a sign that like I2C or SPI might be broken. So I'd like to at least get to the point where we replicate it and understand it. Just to make sure that it's like maybe limited to just grayscale displays, for example.
Okay, and on that particular platform.
Right.
Okay. All right, so we'll just hold up. So I think the answer is, let's wait and see.
Can I bring up one other possible thing?
Yeah.
Let's see if anyone else has run into it. I haven't. I think it's only happened on the S2, but I'm not even sure. That's when you're cutting and pasting into the REPL. I don't know if anyone else has run into this, but I noticed that if I cut and paste, particularly, and I haven't triggered the sequence that does it, but a lot of times the cut and paste will fail, and it'll fail in kind of a funny way. Seems that, and I don't know if it's if you've done I don't have a good examples of it, but I've had a lot of trouble with cutting and pasting, especially certain kinds of lines that have parentheses in them with long argument lists. It cuts them off, and it just some funny things. But it also may be related to whether or not you've done an up arrow, using read line type stuff. So, has anyone else run into that?
I've definitely run into lots of issues that are similar to that on the other ports.
Okay.
Have often had to do with buffering.
Have to do with what?
Oh, they've had. I've never really pinned down exactly what they were, so I'm not sure if there's a common theme that causes that behavior, but definitely the copy pasting has been one of the most problematic aspects I've had with the REPL across all ports.
Okay, so maybe it's just a generic thing, and I'll try and come up with some simple examples and put them in. But again, isn't going to hold up 6.0, sure, but I'm just curious if other people are running into it. Thanks.
Yeah, I mean does kind of sound like it could be caused by tiny USB.
Yeah.
The thing that, like, I don't do any large copy and pasting, so I don't think I'd see it, but I would just like
It doesn't have to
say,
be large. It doesn't have to be a big, single line or something like that. Sometimes it works fine, and in some conditions, sometimes you can do a nice big block. And other times it just fails horribly. It's not really predictable.
If there's one thing I've learned is that you can spend a lot of time kind of like trying to pin down like what the actual specific reproducible problem is, and then it turns out that it's just some janky thing way upstream in tiny USB, and you just like spend a bunch of time on something that just kind of gets fixed upstream. So,
Well, can I ask a question? Could it be that somebody stuck a tab somewhere in a comment, and then
Dan, can you
right
mute while you're
after-
typing?
What?
Dan was typing as loud as I can hear you, Charles. So go
I'm
ahead.
sorry. No, I was just asking. Could it be a formatting in the text that you're cutting and pasting? Because it doesn't sound like it happens all the time.
Yeah, it's like a question of where you're cutting from.
Yeah, like if you don't cut from the beginning of the line.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
I think my take on this is kind of just like, oh yeah, Foamy Guy points out the tab would cause completion.
Yeah.
Yeah, maybe.
in the previous problems of the error that I saw often when it was a buffering problem, it would drop kind of unpredictable numbers of characters every set. No, it like in a set number of characters. So it would like every 5 or 10 characters, it would drop one. It would miss one.
Yeah. Okay, that was different from what I thought it might be.
Oh, that's just what I've run into. I mean, it could be something totally different. But I did see that behavior on ST and on IMX for a little bit. There's an issue on both of those.
Okay, yeah, I see what. Okay, now that I understand what you're talking about. It makes. I don't think what I was thinking was the right answer, although I've encountered.
It might still be. I don't know.
It dropped out when you're cutting and pasting. It's not catching the end of the line, and then it drops. Yeah, then you press an enter key, and it doesn't remember where the indent is. I've had that happen a couple of times. That may be just that it dropped the character on the end, and it just screwed up the indent on the next line. And I think that's just a matter of making sure that you push it off the end of the line so that you don't around to the beginning of the next line.
Right, so you don't wrap.
So it doesn't try to wrap it into one line.
Yeah, I think
into one line.
My feeling on this is that it's not important enough to block the stable release on.
It's good to know about, though.
Yeah, it's good to know about, and it looks like Jeff already has this issue file that sounds similar to what Jerry was talking originally.
Okay.
Might be a good idea to try and stress test it across a bunch of different ports and make like kind of a big combo issue for it to see if there's anything that's related between the different port problems.
Yeah, I think this issue is probably just something we should just ask TAC to look at.
Right. That's true.
For tiny USB.
And then eliminate it. Eliminate tiny USB as a possible source of problem.
Well, I'm almost positive that's the problem. Like it sounds very like
no better than I ever will.
Like we've gotten the most churn in this part of the code from tiny USB. It's not like CircuitPython's handling of serial stuff is changing at all. So it makes me think that it's like we upgraded tiny USB with 6.0, and so that makes me feel like it's that. Now we could pull the latest tiny USB in, but I don't want to do that for stable either. And in fact, I don't really want to pull either tiny USB or the IDF for 6.1 as well. So I think my bias overall is just like, it's ready. We should get it out. People will find some issues, and the catastrophic ones we can fix in a 6.01. But generally, I would really like to get us to a 6.1 world. Even if 6.1 is not stable, I'd like to be able to start releasing it. Primarily because that's where I want to keep ESP32S2 folks. So the only reason that I'd like us to just take a brief look at the grayscale thing is just like making sure that like SPI isn't broken or I2C isn't broken, which I doubt it is, but it's just like those things are so core to what people do that I want to make sure that we just double check it. Does anybody disagree with me? Or would it be okay if we look at this grayscale thing, we figure out why it's fixed in, because it's fixed in main from what Melissa was testing. So like if we spend an hour figuring out what this was, is it still okay to release with it if it's not like a broad problem?
I mean, that sounds fine to me. I think otherwise we're pretty stable.
Yeah, I put a link to ESP32S2 crash on import, but it's just weird, and ESP32 is beta, so it shouldn't stop a stable release.
I think we're fine to do stable.
Okay. So Dan, do you want to look at that OLED thing, or should I later today or tomorrow?
I don't have a grayscale.
Okay, I do have one around here.
Yeah.
So yeah, I could do it.
Yeah, if you could just try it, yeah. That's
okay.
But I thought it was something to do with display I/O, but I didn't. That was my assumption. But
that's my suspicion too, and I wouldn't block the release on that.
Yeah.
If all we have to say is like use 6.0 alpha 1 or 6.1 alpha 1, like, then it's fine.
Yeah.
If it's just limited to like grayscale OLEDs, like, the only reason I would block is if it was like very broad.
Yeah.
I might have one to test, Scott, if you need testing.
Okay, yeah. I think I'll try to remember to do it because mag tag's important as well. I think people are excited.
Yeah.
So getting that guide, like, I'm not a guide person, so. Yeah, I do think I have one. I just have to find it in my box.
I only think I have one. I think I remember seeing it going past when I was reorganizing.
Yeah. Well, it's new.
Yeah.
I think I
had a couple. I had a couple fairly recent orders that were here.
Okay. Cool. Okay, so I think that's the conclusion of this is like we are ready. We just need to double check that this issue is not a large one.
Mm-hmm.
And yeah, David G points out that MagTag is grayscale 2, which it's possible that there was something that I fixed when I added the grayscale support for the e-ink, but the e-ink was a lot of gymnastics that the OLED shouldn't need. Because the OLED actually stores the 2 bits of grayscale next to each other, where the e-ink doesn't. Cool. Well, expect to see that this week. Unless something large comes out, and then I think we'll plan on doing a 6.1 pre-release pretty quick after that too.
I think that's a great idea.
Yeah, I think there's a lot of good stuff in 6.1 that we'll want to get in 6.1.
Right, and I think as Scott has pointed out to me, like we can't start making 6.1 releases before we push 6.0 to be stable, because we only have two. We have a stable release and the unstable release, and so we're already people have to retrieve stuff out of S3 or something instead of just going to CircuitPython.org.
Exactly.
So,
the quicker we can alleviate that, the better.
Sweet. Well, I'll try to do that today. If you don't hear me do it today, then bug me tomorrow, please.
Okay. All right.
Because I do have a lot of stuff where I'm like, oh, I need to do that. Oh, I need to do that. Okay. let me wrap up. So this has been the CircuitPython weekly meeting for November 9th, 2020. Let me scroll down to the things I have to say. Thank you to everybody who participated. If you want to support Adafruit and CircuitPython as an extension of that, please consider purchasing from the Adafruit shop at adafruit.com. This meeting was recorded, so you can check it out later and share it with folks by going to ADAFRU. Wait, that's not right. I was mixing things. You can go to youtube.com/Adafruit to see the recording on the Adafruit YouTube channel. You could also check it out as a podcast on podcasting services. It will be in the Python for Microcontrollers newsletter that goes out to everyone on Tuesday mornings. If you aren't subscribed to that, you can subscribe by going to adafruitdaily.com. The next meeting is a week from today. As I check the calendar. Yep, it is a week from today. Here on the Adafruit Discord server, which you can join by going to adafru.it/discord. If you want to participate next week for the first time with voice, make sure that you're in the Python or in the CircuitPythonistas role. So just ping one of the like Tannewt or Katney or Dan H if you want to get added to that, or any of the. You could ping the moderators too, but you know, don't always like to do that. Anyway, next meeting is next Monday at 2 p.m. Eastern, 11 a.m. Pacific. And before then, we'll see everybody on the Discords. Thank you all for making it, and we'll see you next week.
Thanks, everyone.
See you later.
Thank you.